Watch out, folks. I got my battering ram ready to go. Gonna plunge down to the Coliseum today because we got the Los Angeles Rams. We're gonna be doing a 7-round mock draft. Talk about this roster. What do they need to improve? And how do we go into the free agency approach? A lot of questions. Cooper Kupp. You got Matthew Stafford. What do you do? A lot of big questions there. And of course, we'll do a 7-round mock draft as I'll mention it before. Anyway, let's get our battering rams ready to go. Hey, you never know when you need one. I got to keep one in my car. I don't think it would fit, but hey, if it's Sunday and you got to get to a Chick-fil-A, boom, you hit that thing with a battery. Now, don't do that. Bad idea. Just imagine the headlines, though, on that thing. But we start off with the offensive tackles. And Aldrich Jackson, a free agent, a big decision. It's an easy decision, but you got to bring him back. He's been so good. You got Rob Havenstein, been very solid as well. You got 2 good tackles in here. Just got to stay healthy, and they got to find that developmental guy at the right tackle position. That's my one gripe here. You don't really have anybody. Warren McClendon has shown some growth, especially at the end of the season. Beginning of the season was rough. However, as the season progressed and he got an opportunity at the end of the year, I thought he played better, so we'll see how he comes along. He could even move inside at guard. I think they need to draft and develop a right tackle of the future, re-sign Aldrich Jackson, keep Robert Havenstein. He's still a very good right tackle, as much flack as he does get it sometimes. I think he's a solid starting right tackle in the league. He's a top 25-ish tackle, certainly in my belief. So I'm going to be looking at a mid-round draft pick. It could even be a first-round pick, depending on who is available. No matter how you state this to me is a mid to high priority need, trying to find the future to protect your quarterback, whether it is Stafford or whoever it may be down the line. To the borderline and to the interior of the offensive line. You got a good interior of the offensive line. If I said defensive line, apologize. I may have said that. Who knows? But you got Steve Avila, you got Bo Limmer, and you got Kevin Dotson as your starters. Bo Limmer was excellent, really, as a rookie. He had some communications issues, and you're going to talk about the Jalen Carter, what the heck happened there, those final 2 reps really of the game. Him and Kevin Dotson were just not in sync at all in that one. So they're going to have to figure out some communication. That's to be expected. But I thought Bo Limmer had a really solid rookie campaign. You got Steve Avila. Hey, Avila did struggle a little bit more this year in my eyes comparative to his rookie season, actually, which, hey, it can happen. And they were having some shuffling too with this offensive line. Kevin Dotson was dealing with injuries. He struggled at the beginning of the year, actually, and when he was dealing with some injuries, and he got healthy as the end of the season went along and did look better and got back to more of his Pro Bowl level self. Jonah Jackson was the big shocker for me. Like, you go into this, you're like, all right, Jonah Jackson's going to stud this interior. I thought he was going to play left guard, and then Steve Avila was going to move into center, but they're like, nope, we want Steve Avila to be left guard and Jonah Jackson to play center. So that was a surprising move as I watched the season. But anyway, I think what Jonah Jackson's going to be an interesting situation now that we're up on it. Jackson's a good player. He really is. It's like, what do you do, right? Do you trade him? I would personally recommend you just keep him because the Rams really have not gotten a whole ton for their draft trades. So it's like, if you're going to get a 6th-round pick, I'm not trading Jonah Jackson because you would save a little bit more money in that case. So I guess it could be compelling in that regard. Overall, I probably would just keep him with the injuries that they've had. Keeping that depth is so important, and if you cut him, you only save $3 million, so it's not worth doing that. Clearly, Jackson is a guard and not a center. That's the way I see this. Now, other depth-wise, Dylan McMahon, Vince McMahon, will get the wrestling going. I thought was okay in that Seattle game, so as a rookie, he's another guy to keep an eye out on. Justin Dedich, another guy to possibly be a really good depth player, right? And Dedich was a guy that just needs to get a little stronger, and I still think, you just get a little stronger, and as he goes along, could be a really serviceable backup for them. Anyway, they're in a pretty good spot here. As long as you keep Jonah Jackson, I don't think the interior is a draft need, so that's kind of the way I see this here. As long as Jonah Jackson's back, they should be in a really, really good spot on this interior going forward. Not really a draft need. I think the tackle position is really the draft need. Let's go on to the tight end room here, and this is a need. I do think it is. You got Tyler Higbee, who is a very good tight end. He's just coming off injuries, and that's been a big thing for him. He's their best receiving threat in this offense. Colby Parkins has been a bit of a disappointment, in my opinion. Like, when he did have to fill in early for Higbee, he was okay. Like, at the beginning of the season, I'm like, okay, we're seeing some promise out of Colby Parkinson. As season progressed, though, I don't know. He's a receiving option that really just can't block. I feel like he's more of like this. I don't know. It's an interesting one. I think they kind of, at this point, need another option going forward. They need another blocker in this room. And then long term, they're going to need another receiving threat too. And Davis Allen took a bit of a step back this season. Hunter Long wasn't too bad. So I think that in general, we'll see. Now, Davis Allen was dealing with his own set of injuries. So maybe as he goes into his third season, he can get fully healthy and things like that. Overall, though, I do think they need to add into this room, whether it's a late round blocking type or if they want to shoot in the mid rounds here. I wouldn't put this as an early priority. I think there's some other areas they have to hit. With that being said, though, if somebody's on the board that falls to him, if a Tyler Warren or a Colston Loveland falls him in the first round, oh, that's a slam dunk. I don't think Tyler Warren will be there. But Loveland, there's definitely a possibility Loveland falls to them at that point. I would consider that really as a great option for them. But that's really what I would be looking at, just depending on how the board falls. Overall, I will be adding it to this room and trying to get to tight end for the future. Higbee's on one more year of his contract. Parkinson, you could get off of his contract even this offseason and save a little bit of money, but I see it 2026. Really, you could get off his contract by then. So I will be looking to add somebody into this room at the tight end position. Now, this is my number one area of need on the offense side of the ball. It's the wide receiving room. And Cooper Kupp, unfortunately, it looks like they're moving on from him. And it kind of was to be expected. The injury bug's been a big problem with Cooper Kupp. And the money he's being paid at this point, they're looking to get cheaper on this roster in general. So I'm going to be looking at drafting somebody here. I will say that Jordan Whittington looks really good. And when he was to fill in early in the season for Cooper Kupp was just phenomenal. He played a little inside out too. He's got strong hands and he's a tough guy to tackle and whatnot. So he just kind of fits the mold of what they look for. He's not the most dynamic guy, but he can definitely work. And he's somebody that I see as a long-term starter for them. And then you got Puka Nacua. We don't need to talk about Puka Nacua. He's their number one receiver. Just injuries have been Puka Nacua's biggest Achilles heel, even going back to BYU. But you talk about the top flight ability that he brings to the table. He is one of the toughest, if not the toughest guy to tackle in the NFL. I feel like in terms of the receiver position. Now, Derrick Henry, running back. Anyway, receiver, I think Puka has got the crown there. And then you got Demarcus Robinson. A little bit of a slow start to the year, and I thought he did a great job, though, at the end of the season, especially when it mattered. Obviously, you go back to the Philadelphia game, had that one deep post that he was able to come down with that catch. He is a really solid number 3 wide receiver that you can bring back on the cheap. I'm thinking like $4 or $5 million range. I'm okay with that. Now, I would not pay any more than that. However, if he's willing to come back, which he's already said, hey, he wants to be here in LA, and that is totally fine. I'm cool with that, but it is definitely going to have to be a team-friendly deal. I do think Tutu Atwell, even though I like Tutu, he makes some tough drops here and there, and that's always kind of his thing. And he's not the biggest body type, so he can struggle with some strength. He's got some speed, though, and has some playmaking ability. We'll see what they want to do with him. Personally, though, the way that they don't want to get him out on the field a lot of times, I don't see them re-signing him. So that's just kind of my view. I think they'll end up re-signing Tyler Johnson on the cheap and doing something like that because he's a solid backup to have for them as well. No matter what, though, this is going to be a first-round need. No joke. I could see them going after a receiver in the first round. It just depends on who's available because will Matthew Golden be on the board? Will Emeka Buka be on the board? Like, if Emeka Buka's on the board or Matthew Golden, I totally see them drafting one of those guys. I think that would very much be in the cards because they need to clearly add another weapon in here. Even with Whittington and you bring back Demarcus Robinson, they are going to be looking at another weapon with the injuries that they've had and trying to boost this young core. And moving on to the running back room now, and you got Kyren Williams. Williams had a bit of a down year, in my opinion, this season. A lot of fumbles and a lot of clutch fumbles, too, that hopefully next season we'll see him get a little adjusted there and hold on the ball more consistently. He's a tough-nosed runner, and I cannot knock that with Kyren Williams. He's still a very good running back. I love the way he's got that vision, man. He feels lanes opening up. And once again, he runs like a battering ram. As we were talking about earlier to begin this, man, is exactly what I want. He's the guy running down the Chick-fil-A there on Sundays. I like Williams in that regard. But I feel like they're missing something in this room. You got Blake Corum, who's the same thing, right? Great vision, power. Ronnie Rivers, another one of these guys, maybe not the craziest of athletes, but he runs his butt off. And so does Cody Schrader. I mean, Schrader's another one. They're missing the element of dynamicism in this room. They need a receiving back. They need somebody with some explosion. So that is going to be, they don't need a full-time starter. They need a rotational guy. So it's not a first-round need or anything like that, but hey, I guess a sneaky option for this team would be to go up for a Travion Henderson. I mean, it would be like a woo moment sort of thing, but it wouldn't actually shock me if they did something like that. However, for me, I think this is a day 3 need. Find that rotational gadget speed back that can be a good complementary set of skills into this room and give you that more explosive runner, because I feel like their offense did lack in that department. I think their longest run this season was 30 yards. So, yeah, they need a little more explosion in the room. Okie dokie, quarterback conversation. Here we go. Matthew Stafford. I'll be honest. There's some bias here because Matthew Stafford is one of my favorite quarterbacks of all time. I am been a huge fan of Matthew Stafford throughout his entire career, going back to Georgia. He was my favorite player at Georgia and one of my favorite college players of all time, up there with Joey Harrington and Chad Penningtons and those guys. Huge fan of him coming out. And I can't let him go. Like, you're not going to see me trade him. You're not going to see me cut him. That's just not what I'm going to do. If he wants to come back, he's coming back in my eyes. I understand the whole trying to get a little younger youth movement. They think they could probably get by building an elite roster and a mid-tier quarterback, maybe like the 49ers-esque are doing right now, even though Purdy's, a solid quarterback, but I think he's kind of in that top 15 range, and maybe that's what they see they can do, get a cheap quarterback that can do that, build an elite roster, and build a young roster at that. We'll see what happens with Stafford. I'm rooting for him. I really like him, and I still think he's a good quarterback. He's still clutch as ever. I mean, so many times, he didn't finish it off. They should have kept going with the 2-minute drill in that game. I was like, come on, don't let him, rest and get Jalen Carter full recovery and stuff like that. But yeah, they were winning that 2-minute drill. And then they had got that going. That offense was clicking versus the Eagles, and they were throwing the ball well in the snow. So anyway, Matthew Stafford, it wasn't his best season, but he was still very good, still very clutch. And if you can get more receiving help too in here, more consistency at that department, I think Matthew Stafford will, he's still a top tier, top 10 level quarterback in the NFL. Jimmy G looked good in the Seattle game. So if you want to bring him back, I thought he earned a contract to be a solid veteran option. I will be looking at drafting somebody, though, at least to add more competition with Stetson Bennett. This is like a late round throw that you can come in there, compete for that third spot, maybe win the backup, and who knows, right? Maybe you can hit a Brock Purdy at the end of the draft. So that's what I'm looking at. I'm not seeing this as a first or a third round type of need at this point, especially in this draft class. I think you wait till next year, have Stafford be your quarterback for now, and continue to see what you can do, and maybe you take a late round throw like I talk about and see if you can hit somebody there. Let's go on to the defense now and start off with this scary defensive line. They have turned, we're thinking, oh, Aaron Donald's retiring. They're in so much trouble. What? I mean, the turnaround to be able to go from Aaron Donald to this defensive line is incredible. So shout out to Les Snead and Sean McVay and everybody in the drafting room to be able to get these guys in here, because now they have this formidable front that is legit one of the best young cores in the NFL. You got all the right combination. You got baggers in here, grocery baggers. You got in hustlers. You got in dudes with extreme talent. Jared Verse is already a top tier edge rusher in the NFL in my eyes. Byron Young, but Jared Verse deserves so much. I mean, this guy legit was causing havoc. And while he didn't put the numbers that some of these other guys even put up, he actually had like the least amount of sacks out of this dude. He, to me, was creating the most havoc. And I mean, he was just dominant at times. He took over games. So Verse, Young, Michael Hoyt is a tough-nosed guy. I would bring him back. I really would. And if they want to let him go, if they say, hey, we're going for the youth movement, I could understand that. Like Kyer Thomas and then also Brennan Jackson. I like Jackson a lot, actually, coming out of Washington State. He's another one of those guys that's just a super high motor guy, knows how to win with his hands. And he actually looked good, too, down the stretch there in that Seattle game. I thought he looked good. I was keeping an eye on him. I'm like, yeah, Brennan Jackson's flashing out here. So keep an eye out on him. I think he could end up replacing Michael Hoyt in the long run. I would still try to bring back Hoyt since he gives you so much versatility, too. And just the way he plays with his hair on fire and what he brings in the locker room with his leadership. So that to me is invaluable. He's going to be a guy that I prioritize personally. We'll see what they do. They've, through in the past, they've kind of let go of these guys. Go the Morgan Foxes and the different players and whatnot. But, I'm saying that those type of guys, or Ashawn Robinsons, they've let those guys go in the past. We'll see what they do with Hoyt here. So my view on this is not really a draft need. It's bring back Michael Hoyt, and you're in a pretty good spot. You could bring somebody else in here, but I think between Thomas and Jackson, you could find that fourth guy, Hampton. As we continue to build on to this success on the interior of the defensive line, Colby Turner, Brandon Fisk. Brandon Fisk and Colby Turner are just studs. And then you got Desjuan Johnson, who didn't see as much of him until the end of the year. You got Tyler Davis, who they were playing him pretty consistently. I like him out of Clemson. I think he'll be a solid rotational player. Neville Gallimore, Bobby Brown, the third. This is my area they need to improve. They need to get stronger. They need to get somebody who can hold the point of attack, make their linebackers' job easier because they don't really seem to value the linebacker position a whole ton. So my view on this is let's go get a dominant run defending nose tackle, one tech. That's what they're really missing from this defensive line. They did get pushed back in the run game one too many times. I think Bobby Brown just couldn't quite hold the point of attack consistently enough in my eyes. Neville Gallimore, same thing. Like their big guys just really couldn't hold the point of attack. They got a lot of youth in here. I totally get that. And as they continue to get stronger, hopefully it'll get better and better. I'm not saying you can't bring back Bobby Brown or anything like that. Personally, though, I do think there's some good options. Add that veteran big guy into the room next to Fisk, next to Turner, and that would be really, really good to stop the run, help the linebackers out as well. And then we go into the linebacking room, which it's a little shaky. But once again, the way that this defense has kind of gone through the years, and now Chris Shula as the helm of the defense coordinator, which I thought he did an exceptional job this season. So shout out to him too. I mean, him and Michael Ford as the coordinators were very, very good. Sean McVay, of course, is the head coach, really good head coach. We'll talk about coaching a little bit later. But this linebacking core needs some influx of talent, absolutely. And I would recommend you bring in a veteran free agent that they can come here, especially since they don't really value the linebacker position. See if you can get a guy for like $5 million, relatively cheap, that can come in here and be a scrappy nose guy, help them out in that regard. That's really what I'm looking at doing here. And then draft somebody to develop in maybe the mid-round range, mid to, let's say 4th through 7th round, especially with the reason that they don't seem to value going early linebacker. I will say Omar Speights was an excellent surprise. UDFA pickup. He's another guy that plays with hair on fire. And that's the big thing with linebackers. And that's why you see so many like UDFA or late round linebackers hit, because to play linebacker, you have to play with your hair on fire. And I mean legit. You cannot be scared of nothing. You got to have the heart. You got to have the determination. And it's a lot more than just straight up smarts out there. You got to just want it. That's what it is with a linebacker position. You just got to boom. You got to play. Sometimes you're going to miss, and that's the thing with the linebacker. It's a little bit of a volatile position as well. Anyway, you got Troy Readers, a free agent, ended up on IR. You got Jake Hummels, more of a special team guy. Christian Roseboom, another one of these scrappy guys. He's just, the whole Mekhi Becton thing, people are going to show clips and clips of that all off season, I'm sure. Anyway, he's not a bad player. I'm okay bringing him back on the cheap. He's really not a bad option to do that. We'll see what they want to do, though. I do think there are options they can upgrade elsewhere between free agency and the draft. And that's really what I'm going to be looking at doing, is trying to get some sort of help in here, even if they aren't going to value this position. And maybe they even value the safety position a little bit more. You could find like a big safety, because they play a lot of like 4-3-4 type of defense. And what I mean by that is like got 4 down linemen, 3 linebackers, one being like a big safety or another DB, etc. They play a lot of dime and nickel packages in this defense. So that's why linebacker also is not a huge priority for me, because they're trying to get more lighter guys out there anyway. They aren't necessarily putting all these linebackers in general. And that's why I would prioritize the defensive tackle position, or like a nose tackle, over a linebacker. I still think it's a need, though. Let's go on to the cornerback room, and it gets a little crowded, it gets a little crazy here. So let's try to break this down. You got Darius Williams, who they brought in on a contract. Be honest with you, I don't know if he comes back. You can save like $7 million. He's an okay corner. He's getting a little bit older, and I know he loves LA and everything like that. He said this is his home, and I totally respect that. He's not a bad player. If they want to bring him back, I'm okay with that. Ideally, you get him more around the $4 to $5 million. Maybe you can talk up a little bit of a pay cut. I don't know if he's going to be willing to take a pay cut. Those are more discussions when we get a free agency. I do think that they can look to upgrade in general. They're missing the guy with the size, right? Akilla Witherspoon was the guy with the size in the room. He's a free agent. I'm okay bringing him back. He's not a bad guy to bring back on the cheap. I don't think he'd be super expensive either. My view of it is try to bring back Akilla Witherspoon. Have Kobe Durant step into Darius Williams' place. Because honestly, to me, this is my opinion, watching the games this year, I thought Durant was their best cornerback. This dude's a stud. I thought he locked it down in man coverage. He was super sticky. And of course, you're a smaller guy, you're going to let up some catches because some dudes are just going to moss you. That's what happens. But he was always feisty at the catch point. Just sometimes when he didn't have the strength to knock the pass out. Overall, I saw Kobe Durant make so many big plays this season. So I think you have Durant and then Witherspoon as your outside guys going into the offseason. as your starters, and then you look at upgrading from there and trying to find a guy for the future behind Ahkello Witherspoon in that role as your size cornerback that can play those bigger receivers, have Durant play more of your shifty guys on the other side as your number 2. And then at slot, you got Quinn Lake, solid player, another guy that I saw make a lot of plays more in the run game. He can be exploited. He's not like the most twitchy guy or anything like that. But anyway, I think he's a good slot corner, solid, and especially for a cheap contract, you don't have a problem. Josh Wallace was solid too in depth and rotation. Then, one thing I do want to mention with a lot of these guys like Darian Kendrick, I think they can move on from him, save $3 million. And then Trey Thomas is going to be competing for a roster spot next season. Emmanuel Forbes, he'll be competing for a roster spot. Forbes, was watching him too, checking him out in the Week 18 matchup versus the Seattle Seahawks. He let up a couple plays. I think I remember him. I think he had like one missed tackle or something like that. But overall, there were like a couple of short passes on him. And in general, I thought he looked solid in that game. Nothing bad. So maybe he's a guy that what you go into training camp, you see what you have with him. In general, though, I will be looking at adding a cornerback. This is a first, third, at latest fourth round need with some size. Like I talk about, they need somebody with some more length and ability to cover those bigger receivers on the perimeter. Could be another sneaky type of need is the safety position. Now, you got Cameron Kitchens and Cameron Curl. These are both really good players, but to me, they're kind of both box players. Jalen McCullough and Elsa McCullough had some big plays this season. They got like 4 interceptions as a rookie. Now, like 3 of them were on tip passes, legit, and then one of them was like an overthrow. Overall, though, I'm not going to take any credit for you being in the right place at the right time, and the guy clearly has some instincts to him. UDFA pickup out of Tennessee. So, yeah, McCullough's a guy you watch out for, and maybe he can continue to build on his success. My one gripe, though, here is, do they have that guy with speed in the back end to be able to cover sideline to sideline with range? They can get away with it again in their scheme, so I understand that. Overall, though, would I love to add somebody with a little more speed and have Cam Kitchens be that, like, box guy / more of a, spy / robber role? Like, that to me is, I love Cameron Kitchens in that sort of a role. Cameron Curl, really good in the box, right? I think Curl really thrives in the box. He's a ferocious tackler, just not really much of a cover guy. So that's really what they're missing, is somebody who could really cover some tight ends as well. I think they could use somebody with a little bit more speed. So I don't know if it's something they're going to highly prioritize. However, I do think it could be a sneaky need for them. And don't be surprised. We'll see what they end up doing here. Once again, I don't know if I'm going to do anything, but it is something I think they could use in this room. Let's go on to the free agency strategy now. And it's time to talk business. It's time to talk numbers. Get your calculators out. Actually, please do not get your calculators out. I may have done the math wrong here, but hopefully not. Start off, though, with the team cuts trade. And in this case, we're going to trade Cooper Kupp for a future 6th-rounder. I'm just being realistic with what they've gotten from other guys. Cooper Kupp, too, with his contract, with the injury history. How much are they going to get for Cooper Kupp? It could be more. It could be less. Don't, take it. I want to do a future pick anyway because I'm not going to include the draft pick. Yeah, that gets too wonky. I don't think it's fair either in a lot of cases. I try to keep it with what their draft picks are and any sort of plus from there. I know Sean McVay and Les Snead have already said they want more draft picks. So it's definitely a real possibility that they get more draft picks this season from either trading down and that's really what I think they're going to try to do, is trade down from that first round and maybe pick up a second and then something else or whatever after trading up last season. Ultimately, though, I don't want to go too crazy into it, all right? And I try to keep it somewhat realistic as well with what they got. Cooper Kupp, though, 5th or 6th round pick, somewhere in that regard. You save $12.52 million by doing that. We also are going to cut Darius Williams and Darian Kendrick to give us actually a little over $10 million right there as well. Gets us up to over $62 million, which now leads us into the team free agent period where we're going to have to re-sign our guys. And Jimmy Garoppolo, hey, keep him around. That veteran, a backup, is important, and I want to keep him in here. 1 year, $4 million. It could be up to like $5 million, I'm guessing, somewhere in that $3 to $6 million range. Demarcus Robinson, with his ability, I think he's a really, really solid number 3, number 4 wide receiver. And for $5 million, I think that's worth it personally. It really does depend on what they want to do between the draft, free agency. And then you got Tutu Atwell, I'm letting go. I'm bringing back Tyler Johnson, though. Hunter Long, bring him back. Both guys should be on the cheap, compete for roster spots. And then we will bring back Aldrich Jackson. Yeah, of course, you got to bring back Jackson. 4 years, $70 million, $18 million average. Now, that could be very in flux. It could be somewhere between 15, as PFF has them, I think, at like 14.5. I think that's a little low. So I think it could be anywhere between that and even $20 million. I think that's a very fair range. We'll see what he ends up getting and wanting on the open market. He may try to test and say, hey, look, this is what I'm worth. This is what I'd like to get at. And or if we can come out within $1 million or $2 of that average. Defensively wise, Michael Hoyt, we're bringing him back. I like him. I want to make sure he is around with that leadership and just tough-nosed grit. I want to keep him in the room. And then we let go a lot of the guys here on defense. Bobby Brown, Neville Gallimore, Rosenboom, NX Reed, Murchison, etc. And then I will bring back, though, Killer Witherspoon and John Johnson as some depth. You got to keep Witherspoon in here because I do want to draft somebody, not have to throw a rookie into the fire there. And I don't want to, bank on Emmanuel Forbes and stuff like that either. Practice squad, I do throw in a budget of $3 million. Guys like Ronnie Rivers, Justin Hemmel, et cetera, et cetera. There's some UDFA guys or some restricted guys that they have to bring back. So I throw that in as a budget slash just if I miscalculate with some of these, I like to throw in a little bit of extra there, compensation, just in case. This is where I'm sure you're getting a little interested. Like, where's he going to go in free agency? Who is he bringing into the Coliseum? Well, we're starting off offensively. I'm bringing a backup tackle. Trent Scott has versatility to play left or right tackle, so that's ever important. Coming over from Washington there. You got Keenan Allen, 1 year, $13 million, $7 million hit this season, $6 million void. You know how these people, these contractors do it now. They get those void years, etc. Help out that cap right now. Keenan Allen, though, he's already said, I'm playing in LA or I'm playing in Chicago. So, hey, let's convince him to come over here. We got Matthew Stafford at the, you still got a good quarterback. And you come in, go back home where your family is. I could see this being a great spot for him. And then DJ Jones on defense and Jordan Phillips. Both really good, solid. Like Phillips, good rotational run defender. DJ Jones is a guy that is an excellent run defender, excellent zero tech, one tech. He holds the point of attack. He's the dirty eater, right? He's the guy that's just going to sit there, be like, nope, you're not moving me. I'm sitting here and I'm just going to eat up these run blocks for days. That's really what DJ Jones does. Yeah, you got to pay him 2 years, $18 million, $9 per season. I think it's worth it, though, for a guy of his talent. He's got the grown man strength I'm looking for. Tyrell Dotson, 2 years, $11 million, 5.5 average. Maybe they look for more of a coverage guy. I get that. But Dotson's, another one of those dudes that plays really, really tough. So you have Dotson and you got Spites, two guys that fit the bill of what they look for as a linebacker in their room. And since I did go Rosenboom, I figured, hey, we'll bring in Dotson to come in here. Maybe he's got a little revenge tour for the Seattle Seahawks and what they did to him. And then finally, I budget in $6 million. It could be anywhere from like the $5 to $7 million range, depending on how many draft picks they get, how many trade downs and stuff like that. And that gets us just above the cap to be able to, do some things. And they could rework Matthew Stafford's contract too if they wanted to get that cap number down. Like that's an easy to fix to get, then they could sign a couple other guys if they wanted to. But no matter what, I think we don't want to go too crazy either. You build through the draft. That's the key. And with this, taking a look at this roster one more time and highlighting the needs once again as before we get into the draft. Offensively wise, I'm still looking at another receiver. Now, it's not even a first round need at this point. You got Jordan Whittington, you got DeMarcus Robinson competing for that third and fourth spot. Johnson will be like a fifth wide receiver. But you got Keenan Allen, and then you got Puka Nacua. That's a great, solid 1-2 punch there at the receiver position for Matthew Stafford. Tight end, we'll look in the draft, though. Tight end's an area we'll also look in the draft. That's going to be something I try to find somebody who can block, really, if nothing else, like early on, be a chip help for this offensive line. And speaking of the offensive line, I'll be trying to draft and develop a tackle. I think that's a third round, possibly even a first round type of priority for them, depending on who is available, all right? If somebody like a Josh Connolly's on the board or Josh Simmons, Kelvin Banks Jr., one of those guys falls, I think that's a great pick for them. Running back wise, I'll be looking at a late day 3 type or mid to late day 3 pick, depending on who's on the board, to find a speed back or a receiving back. And quarterback, same thing. This is more of a day 3 thing for me, looking at a guy that has some upside that we can develop behind the Stafford and Jimmy Garoppolo, and at least give competition to Stenson Bennett for that third and fourth competition at the quarterback spot, or maybe even just third quarterback spot in general. And then on the defense side of the ball, we really filled that nose tackle position in free agency. They could still go after that. I still think that's not a bad area to go. I think this defense line's looking really good, though. Like, it got a rotation on that interior. So I'm not super worried about it. Of course, you can always go trenches. That's always an area you can look at. With that being said, I feel pretty good about that defensive line. Linebacker is something we'll look at here in the mid rounds, especially with them not valuing it so much. I'm going to look at it a little bit later. I do think they could use like a hybrid safety linebacker, especially with their scheme and the way they run it. A sneaky area that I've talked about earlier is like a free safety type, a guy with some speed. You know what I'm saying? Somebody can cover some tight ends as well, maybe. You know what I mean? So that could be even a hybrid linebacker safety type as well. So yeah, that to me was a bit of a problem for them. Anyway, final thing here, in the biggest area of need on the defense still, I do think is the cornerback position. Some may argue with that, and I could see it, right? I definitely could see it. But I want to get somebody with that size profile to be that 1-2 punch with Kobe Durant. Akilla Witherspoon, we brought him back. He can be the starter early on. Like, I don't want to have to force a rookie out there at pick number 26 or at the top of the third round or whatever, pick number 90 at the third round. Like, I don't want to force that rookie out there. So having Witherspoon back helps us out in that regard. And obviously Forbes will compete for a spot too. But I am definitely going to be looking at a cornerback and added somebody with some length and some size to be a good pairing with Durant for the future. Here it is. Let's go. It is draft time. And as I was saying earlier, I wanted to get somebody with some size and some ability to knock out passes, some length. Isaiah Thomas is that guy, man. He brings that to the table. We saw him at the Senior Bowl. And it wasn't always perfect, right? He was covering Tez Johnson and Kyle Williams out there. Those are guys that, are 160, if that pounds, 150, 160, 170 pounds, really twitched up guys. And in the NFL, you got to play quick. You got to play fast. You can't do all those shake and bake things either. Sometimes at the Senior Bowl, you can get away with. I thought Thomas looked very, very smooth. And he's going to be that guy. You go back to his film, and he was utterly dominant to a man coverage. And this team's playing more man coverage, too. So I think that's a real area that they are going to be looking at, is adding a guy who can play in man coverage. And Thomas, to me, is one of the better cornerbacks in this class that can play man coverage. He has 32-inch arms as well. He is a smooth guy. And somebody for 6'1.5", 191, he has got some athleticism there. So we're going Isaiah Thomas out of Florida State. Oh, yeah, let's go. Bring him to the Coliseum. Oh, now we got to add some speed on the other side of the ball. We're going to add Jalen Noel, wide receiver, Iowa State. And everyone talks about Jaden Higgins. You know what? I got a little bit of a hot take here. I think Noel's going to be better in the NFL. I'm just saying it right now. I like Noel. I like him a lot. And sounds like a Christmas carol or something like that. Maybe he will be. We'll be singing some Christmas carols in LA if he comes down over there, and he's going to really give him some speed. And I also think he can work inside out. He showed that at the Senior Bowl as well. I know he was kind of pigeonholed to the slot, more or less, at Iowa State. And that's, I think, going to be his role. And that's fine. Like, he can develop for a season by Keenan Allen and play on the outside a little bit too. And I really don't think that'll be a problem for him. He has the release package. He is strong enough too to handle NFL press. I see it, at least. I thought he was very, very smooth in the Senior Bowl. He was one of those guys that wasn't like super flashy all the time, but he caught passes consistently, and he showed speed. Like, he was constantly ranking up the 20 plus mile an hour on the GPS. So he's got that top end speed to his game. So he kind of fits that Tutu Atwell replacement for them, but brings them some more size and more ability. Blocking is going to be the one area I think he's going to have to improve upon for Sean McVay in this offense. Overall, though, I like him and adding him in it as another weapon. Okay, we added in some speed, but now let's get real. We want to add a hog molly. We want to add a tough-nosed guy, somebody with some strength profile, right? Let's not get so soft out here, G-Sling. Let's get some toughness. Let's get some grittiness. That's Jalen Rivers. He plays left tackle. He played left guard for the Hurricanes. He showed, though, at the Senior Bowl, I think he can hold down. I think he can hold right tackle, no problem. Let him develop. He's got great size. I mean, he's got 35-inch arms, 6'5", 331 pounds. The dude is a rocked-up monster. He's got the strength profile. His feet aren't the quickest, okay? But I think he can hold up a tackle, especially with that size and that strength profile. I really do. So I'm drafting him here as a tackle, as a developmental right tackle for this team behind Rob Havenstein. And if nothing else, he can be a swing guy for you. No matter what, though, trying to add some competition and hopefully finding that future right tackle. Sticking with the theme of offense and adding more firepower, Benjamin Jurasik, tight end, Georgia, formerly of Stanford, transferred over to Georgia. He ended up being a dog. He wanted to be a dog as a blocker. He showed it this season. He certainly put on, a lot more toughness, a lot more into the blocking department, going to Georgia, which actually I think is a good thing for him. And I kind of knew going into this, like, he's going to be a receiving element at the next level. I wanted to see what he could do as a blocker. He showed a lot more of that this season for Georgia, who have so many tight. I mean, you got Lawson Lucky, Oscar Delp, and Benjamin Urasic, and I'm sure they have some other crazy talented players on, behind depth chart wise. Anyway, like, they have a formidable punch at tight end, and that's why he really didn't see a whole ton of work in the receiving game. I'm not going to knock him off of that, but he made the most of his opportunities, and the talent is there. And tight end's a position that is one of those where you see guys come out of the woodworks. You really are looking for athleticism and you're looking for traits. Urasic has that. And I think he can be a vertical stretcher, something that they don't have really right now, but also give you the toughness as a blocker. So I'm taking a chance on Urasic here in the fourth round. I think the value makes sense. Here's another Senior Bowl cat, Kareem Reed, the linebacker from Utah. And this is going to be a death pick early on. Did I say piss? A pick early on. I'm sorry. Woo! Gotta bleep myself out of here. Gotta calm down. But anyway, Kareem Reed, linebacker from Utah. This guy, I actually felt he was going a little underrated because a lot of people are talking about Landon Barton. I actually kind of like Reed's tape a lot. He's more the cover guy there. Now, Barton's a really well-rounded football player. He was tasked to cover a lot of tight ends and stuff like that. And as I talked about earlier, that's a bit of a problem for them. And this was kind of my pick to fix some of that, right? He's a guy that I do think can cover some tight ends. He has enough physicality to do that. And also running backs, too. Like, he showed up in the Senior Bowl. He looked good on the one-on-ones. I thought his movement skills were pretty impressive. He's not going to be a blazer or nothing like that. However, I thought he did a pretty impressive job and held his own throughout that process. And in the sixth round, I think this makes sense where they're going to be looking at the linebacker position. So I'm taking a chance on a guy with some more coverage prowess to the linebacker room. Knit 1, Pearl 2. Knit 1, Speed 2. Let's go. We're going to add in Marcus Yarns. These running back from Delaware. I like those, man. I like those uniforms, the helmet. Yeah, I know it gives a little Wolverine vibes, which I can't complain about. The Wolverines, baby. But Marcus Yarns, he is got speed, and he is going to give you that receiving element that they need in this offense, your change of pace back. And that's the thing. Is he going to be like a Tariq Cohen? That's and that's why I think he'll end up going a little later in the draft, just because he's not going to be an every down back. He just does not have the size for that. We'll see where he ends up going, because he's going to be a guy where his combine is going to be huge. Like, if he comes out and does a 4.2 or a low 4.3, he's going to go higher than this. I'll be real. But we'll keep an eye on this. I think right now the value is still 5th, 6th round for Marcus Yarns at the moment. So we'll see where he ends up going. I do want to add in somebody like this, though. Even if he's not available, this is the mold, the type of guy that I'm looking for to be that complementary piece to go along with your Blake Corum, to go along with your Kyron Williams in the room, your Cody Schraders, and Ronnie Rivers. Get this electric, explosive guy receiving element. And then we're on to the final pick, Max Brosmer. And I don't know, Broshmo. Yo, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Like, yo, Broshmo and Brosmer, they got to get on together. That'd be a cool mock draft or something like that. But Max Brosmer from Minnesota, row the boat, the Gopher. He's going to be a really solid late round throw. He has some interesting traits to him. Like, he is not an arm guy. I don't think he's got the arm talent. He can make all the throws. I mean, he's not going to be he's not Matthew Stafford level arm strength or anything like that. So if you're looking for a Matthew Stafford clone, he's not that guy. Okay, he doesn't have the physical presence either. But he seems to have it, you know what I'm saying? Especially coming from a run-heavy, more of a pro-style offense. He's able to make reads. They ask him to go through the field and make plays. And again, it's more of like stuff that translates to the NFL, the type of throws and progressions he goes through. So I was impressed with him just watching Minnesota games. Like, all right, Brosmer's got some play. I mean, he's not a perfect prospect. As I talk about, the traits aren't crazy. He'll make some mistakes here and there. In general, though, I think he's a guy you take in 6th round, and if nothing else, could be a great backup for your roster. But he's definitely got a guy that you never know, right? You take a chance on the quarterback position, and you could possibly hit. So that's it here for our draft. Now, let's recap everything up. We kind of mentioned this throughout the process with coaching, GM. They're in a really good spot. I mean, obviously, you got one of the better coaches in the NFL and Sean McVay. You got a good offensive coordinator, Mike LaFleur. Your defensive coordinator, Chris Shula, in his first year looked great, did a great job. You got Les Snead as your GM. In general, I think they've done a pretty dang good job. So I don't see any shakeups, and they're not going to at this point, and they don't need to. They're in a really good spot there. And, their philosophy, I think, is going to be get younger, get more draft picks, do what they can to continue to ignite this roster where they've shown so much success with these young guys that they're saying, hey, we're energizing this thing. We're getting this thing going. You got to keep some leadership around, and you got to keep some veterans, of course. Trying to find that mix and mash is important. But what we did in the draft and in the areas highlighting it once again, and maybe highlighting some areas that there are other areas that they can go, because there's so many ways to draft, and especially for the Rams or any football team, there's always different ways to go. This is the way that I went, but there are plenty other options that they go after. Offense, I think you got to add another weapon. You got to add another receiver, add another tight end. Those are two areas they need to get a little bit better at. Benjamin Urasek, a good developmental day 3 guy with the traits, the athleticism, the blocking prowess to be a number 1 tight end in the NFL. Is he there right now? No. But could he get there in a season or two? Absolutely possible. And then Jalen Noel, he's going to be a great developmental wide receiver, number 3, 4 early on, and then hopefully be that long-term 1-2 punch with Puka Nacua with his speed and his route running ability. I like Jalen Noel quite a bit. Offensive line, you got Jalen Rivers going to develop at that right tackle position behind Rob Havenstein. Warren McClendon, another guy that could play inside too, so he gives you depth either at tackle or at guard. So yeah, overall, just trying to take a chance with Jalen Rivers. Maybe it hits, maybe it doesn't. But another area that they could go after is a first-round tackle, and I don't hate that either. I think they could very much be in the market for a Josh Simmons or a Josh Connolly Jr., depending on who's available on that pick at 26. And they could trade back too. I think that's a really real option for them as well. And then quarterback and running back wise, add in a developmental quarterback. It doesn't have to be early, just somebody here to give Stinson Benton a push and see if, a guy like Max Brosner can beat him out and work his way up the roster. Marcus Yarns, this was a clear element. I'm looking for somebody with some speed, with some receiving ability to be a complement to these guys. And then on the defense side of the ball, I think the priority here is still finding a number 1 corner to go along with Kobe Durant. I was really impressed with Kobe Durant. I think he's underrated in the NFL right now. I'm a big fan. I think he had a terrific season. But you pair him up with Azaria Thomas going forward. Give him that size. That way Durant doesn't have to go up against big wide receivers every single week and whatnot. And you got Kill Witherspoon, who is coming back because that's important. You don't want to have to stick out Thomas day 1 as a rookie. He could come in there, I'm sure, but I personally would bring him in slowly, like the Ravens and done with Nate Wiggins. But if by the end of the season, maybe he works more into a starting role, right? And he ends up being the number 1 guy. That's really would be ideal, of course. But early on, it'd be nice. Akilla Witherspoon shouldn't be super expensive either. And you got Quentin Lake in the slot. Linebacker, we did more of the free agency approach. Same thing with the nose tackle position. Like, those are priorities. Like, you add a nose tackle. DJ Jones is going to be a huge help in that regard. He's going to make life easier for these linebackers, for Terrell Dotson and also Omar Spites. And having Kareem Reed be a developmental linebacker for them, and I think he gives you some good coverage ability as well. So, yeah, I think that'll help them out, cover some more tight ends, too. Anyway, safety-wise, the only thing, too, I could knock on this as well, because I think that they could use a free safety. They could use a guy with some speed in that back end. So if I had to point one area that I thought maybe I missed here, would be that free safety spot. And you could always draft defensive lineman, too, so I could get that pushback as well, because, hey, defensive line's always important. And that's an area where if you can trade back, get an extra draft pick or two, that opens up a spot for us to be able to draft a free safety, to be able to draft an interior or an edge rusher to go along with that. So that's kind of my approach on this and overall philosophy. Anyway, that's going to do it here for the Los Angeles Rams. I really enjoyed this. This one was a lot of fun. I mean, they're all a lot of fun, but I was like, the Coliseum today, get the Battery Rams going. And let me know your thoughts, your opinions. What would you do differently? And I hope you guys have a really good day, and I'll talk to you later. Be careful with those Battery Rams. They're dangerous.